Welcome to this Al Monitor Pro webinar on prospects for U.S.-Israeli relations, on economy, diplomatic, security, and everything else. I'm Ben Caspit, Al Monitor columnist reporting from Tel Aviv, Israel, and our guest today is Haim Saban. I'm not sure Haim Saban needs introduction, but let's do it anyway. He was born in Alexandria, Egypt, raised in Israel, moved and flourished in the United States. Saban plays on all these courts. He is a worldwide pioneer and leader in the entertainment industry. He is chairman and chief executive officer of Saban Capital Group, a passionate philanthropist and devoted friend and patron of Israel and American-Israeli alliance. Saban will talk with us about all the aspects, risks, and future of this very delicate triangle between Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, and the whole of the Middle East. I will let the viewers submit some questions in about 10 to 15 minutes. You can submit the questions via the Q&A function on your Zoom screen, and possible questions for Haim Saban, I'll try to ask him for you. But first, let's say hello, Haim, from Los Angeles. We are delighted to have you with us in Al Monitor Pro, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin, because there are many questions. The situation is very delicate and not a lot of time. I wanted to ask you first, are you surprised, like many in Israel, from the magnitude, wide scale, and determination of the Israeli government in what they call the judicial reform and others see as a blitz against democracy?
Well, we have a saying in the Jewish community in the United States that you put two Israelis in a room, you're going to get four opinions. So therefore, I'm not surprised at all, because any initiative that is launched in Israel always found, the counter initiative. So no, I'm not surprised by the initiative, nor am I surprised by the reaction to the initiative. So there you have it. No surprise there.
Another surprise is the level of concern and involvement of the American administration. We saw it in the visit of National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan last week, and then came the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. What do you hear from the White House, from Democrat Congress? Because the secretary was talking aloud, even lecturing the prime minister about democracy.
Well, the reality is that the United States has a few items on its agenda. Little things like China, Russia, and the Ukraine, the upcoming elections in 2024, the challenges that the Senate Democrats face then, and the inflation, et cetera. But when I lived in Israel, we always thought that we are the center of the American interest. Israel is not the center of American interest. I think, based on my conversations with different people in the administration and in Congress, that what the United States wants from Israel now, Iran put aside for a minute, is quiet. Quiet, don't stir the pot, because we have much more urgent issues to deal with. So don't be surprised by, Secretary Blinken, or Sullivan coming and trying to create that situation of complete quiet. That is their priority right now.
So is there any contradiction between what the Israeli government is doing right now, when they are not doing anything but this blitz of new laws that will hurt many of the democratic powerhouses in Israel, including the Supreme Court? Is it contradicts this demand of peace and quiet by the administration, or the Americans just had their warning and then they will just leave it as it is and let the Israelis boil in their own pot?
Look, of course, it contradicts the American interest, and hopefully it will not develop into a crisis, because there is no question, at least according to 50 director generals of various Israeli ministries, according to dozens of US law professors, etc., it contradicts the basic principles of democracy. It is above my pay grade to pass a personal judgment, whether it does or it doesn't, but I have to believe that all these experts know what they're talking about. And if indeed it shakes the fundamental reason why the United States have been supportive of Israel, interests put aside, is common values, democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. So, you are in a situation where, we're walking through a minefield here. We, meaning the Israeli Americans, and those that care about that alliance, walking, very cautiously between the mines in the minefield. Could it blow up? It absolutely could blow up. And then it will give a louder voice to the extreme left in the Democratic Party, and maybe some Republicans too. We don't know the extent to which they will be able to get to with those changes. But it is a very dangerous and sensitive situation. So one has to be very, very cautious here to safeguard the alliance.
Do you think, Haim Saban, that the Biden administration have any leverage over Israel, especially on a matter like judicial reform? Would it consider, talking about this minefield, conditioning aid, for example, or diplomatic Iron Dome, like vetoing everything in the Security Council? The United States is doing a lot for Israel, not only the $4 billion a year in many, many fields. Can they reach a point that they will use this leverage, or you don't see such a thing happening, especially when the president has to decide if he's running again, and etc.?
Well, the president deciding whether he runs again or not, I think, is no longer a question. He's been very clear about it, both with me personally a couple of months ago, and what he's saying publicly, what we heard from his former chief of staff that is leaving his position. The President Biden is running in 2024. So that's point number one. Point number two, the extent to which the United States will use its leverage depends on the extent to which that reform will jeopardize the common values with the United States, i.e. democracy. No one can guarantee that, that aid will continue if there is a total breach of common values.
Do you think, Chaim, and I'm moving now to the economic field, a field that you know a lot about, do you agree to the saying that hurting the Supreme Court and other democratic symbols can affect its economy, high-tech, cyber, etc. in Israel? We heard many analysts, including S&P, for example, that warned that the weakening state institutions is a ratings risk. Do you agree to these alerts?
Listen, I'm a former cartoon schlepper, so I don't have, I'm in no position, it's above my pay grade to be able to understand the impact. But what is not above my pay grade is listening to experts in the matter. and that's what all the experts are saying, bringing examples from Poland and Hungary. So if the presidents of Poland and Hungary are, part of the analysis, then in addition to what all the experts are saying, and the bottom line is, doesn't look good for the economy, this big change. So my opinion is that of the experts.
Do you see any prospects for Benjamin Netanyahu? And you know him very well, playing a partisan card in his dealings with the Biden administration, approaching election era?
Well, for Israel's sake, I hope that Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't do that, doesn't play any partisan card. I mean, Israel has always been a consensus in both houses, and in the White House, in the administration, depending which level, from Clinton and Reagan, I would say, at a very high level, and maybe Obama at a lower level, and we're seeing a higher level with Biden. But in terms of both houses, playing any partisan card by any Israeli politician would be a massive mistake, because in order to continue that mutually beneficial relationship, look, the United States is vital for Israel, and Israel is very important to the United States at multiple levels. It's a two-way street, with the way coming from America to Israel being, of course, much bigger and much more important to Israel. So bipartisan support is a crucial part of that relationship. So playing a partisanship would be a mistake, like it was a mistake to invite the then Republican candidate Mitt Romney to Israel and shower him with compliments, etc. It was a mistake. You don't do that. You don't favor one party over the other if you want to have bipartisan support, and that's the bottom line.
And you've been there, as we say in Hebrew. You saw the movie when Netanyahu outmaneuvered Barack Obama for 8 years, and then I remind you that he came to speak in Congress without the president's blessing in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So Netanyahu is capable, and right now we can be desperate enough to do it again, but maybe even stronger. Do you fear such a possibility?
Look, say what you want about Bibi, stupid he ain't. I tell you that. He's a pretty smart cookie. I would be stunned if he repeated such a mistake at that level. I think that he's realized that he has put all the Democrats, most of the Democrats, in a position of having a bitter taste in their mouth about that speech. The Republicans, hallelujah, but with the Democrats, this didn't go down well. And I would be surprised, to be honest with you, if Bibi did this again. I would be very surprised. I don't think so.
Because we are facing a strange situation here when the Iranian issue, in the Iranian issue, Israel and the United States are actually on the same page. I think it's the first time since the beginning of the whole concern about the Iranian nuclear project. And there is no agreement from many reasons. There was a very big common exercise of the two armies last week, I think unprecedented. And this is a very good opportunity for Israel to go on and convince the Americans to go the way Israel thinks we have to go. And suddenly you have these obstacles, talking about the attack on the judiciary system and the Palestinian issue. If Bibi was calling you and asking you what to do, maybe any concession about the Palestinian issue, because Israel, the government right now is very stiff, very right-winged, very national, and extreme, and I cannot see anything happening there.
You're asking me what I would tell Bibi if he asked me what to do.
Yeah.
I would say that if you could extend this podcast by about 26 additional hours, I would be more than happy to share with you some thoughts that I have on the matter. But since the whole podcast is 30 minutes and we've already gone through about 20 minutes of it, I will be short and tell you that it's above my pay grade, katonti, as we say in Hebrew, to lay out, solutions. I will, I can't help but remembering that when John Kerry with Martin Indyk went to Israel in 2014, together with General Allen. Right, who brought with him 160 people to address the issue of security. And the whole idea was for John Kerry and Martin Indyk to go back and forth between Jerusalem and Ramallah and get to some sort of resolution to that problem. I remember that when I was informed that this is going to happen, calling John Kerry and telling him the following. I said, look, it's above my pay grade. There's going to be a general there and a whole army of security experts who are going to determine the security issues, which is the number one issue for Israel, to ensure that Israel can live in peace. Above my pay grade to talk about where the border will be, the green line, before the green line, after the green line. Here's what I do know. As somebody who's dealt with marketing my whole life, I do know that what we need is peace between the people, not only between the leaders. Everybody's fixing up on the leaders. So the first thing you need to do when you sit with Abu Mazen is stop all the incitement on all of the media that you control and go the other way. Go for tolerance. Go for coexistence. And he said, that's the first thing I'm going to tell Abu Mazen. I said, okay. And here we are. So 8 years later, 9 years later. So, it's not only about the leaders. That's what I hear. Arafat could, but didn't want. Abu Mazen wants, but can't. And all these things. This is secondary. The primary issue is to thrive in the direction of peace between the people. Stop the incitement. And then the people will not pressure the Palestinian people will not pressure the Palestinian leadership to have an aggressive stance against Israel. Unfortunately, that's not something I see that people talk about. People talk about Abu Mazen and Arafat and his successor and not, and is it Bibi, and is it Smotrich and I don't know what. So secondary, really secondary, in my opinion.
We just had a question from one of the viewers exactly about what you said. You addressed, don't you think if it's time for Israel to disoccupy the West Bank, open up Gaza and get international security arrangements, such as General Allen plan that you just mentioned? And I want to remind you, Chaim, that Bibi Netanyahu said yes to this offer then, by John Kerry and Martin Indyk and David Makovsky and all these guys. He did not say yes, but he said, if Abu Mazen will accept, I will agree as well. And then Abu Mazen never answered this paper that they worked on for a year. And now we are standing here without anything in the Palestinian front. And I am reminding our viewers that you can submit questions to Haim Saban through the Q&A function on your Zoom screen. And I want to move you with you to the Abraham Accords. You also know a lot about this track. I think you took part in the breaking the ice between Israel and the Emirates through the ambassador, the Emirati ambassador in Washington. And this is a view that something that looks stable. Today we heard that maybe Sudan is joining the accords. With the opening of the embassy of Chad in Tel Aviv, it looks like rock solid, immune against all these things that we are talking about. Do you agree with me that the Abraham Accords are standing still, nothing will hurt them? Or do you think there are things that can hurt and maybe even wound these historical agreements between Israel and important Arab allies in the Gulf and elsewhere?
I think the Abraham Accords are pretty solid. Can things happen that shake up the Abraham Accords? Yes. Haram al-Sharif, the Temple Mount. If the status quo gets changed, and then, that even the UAE was been critical of Ben Gvir, the minister, going up to the Temple Mount. On a personal level, I don't understand if it's the holiest site for Jews, and it's the third holiest site for Muslims, why can't both Jews and Muslims pray there? And Christians, if they want to. It's all about the tolerance that I was talking about before. But the reality of life as we are today, and based on the agreement that was signed in 1967, there is, following the 1967 war, there is a status quo. And if that status quo gets fundamentally changed, that might have a negative effect on the Abraham Accord, no question.
And you remember the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben Gvir, visited the Temple Mount a few days ago. He was doing it twice a week before he became a minister. And I think this visit that was very humble and took only 11 or 12 minutes without press and without a lot of noise like he did before. But I think this trip to the Temple Mount caused the sad fact that Netanyahu did not visit the Emirates yet. He was dreaming and planning to fly first thing to Abu Dhabi, and it didn't happen yet. His first trip is right now while we are speaking to Paris. So do you see a future trip of Netanyahu to Abu Dhabi?
Well, Paris is a beautiful city, but so is Abu Dhabi. So he's going to eventually visit Abu Dhabi. I can't expand too much on what I know on matters related to the visit, but Ben Gvir's visit to the Temple Mount was definitely not helpful in getting a date for that visit, and we'll leave it at that.
Not helpful is good. Haim Saban, I want to ask you about the alliance, not only between the United States and Israel, but between the American Jewry and their brothers in Israel, because even in this front, not everything looks so good like it did in the past. They are talking among the coalition of changing the law that enables every Jew, and even if you're not Jewish according to the halacha, but your grandfather was Jewish, you can make an aliyah to Israel and be an Israeli, and they want to change it. And also, the relationship between American Reform Jews and conservative Jews and the Orthodox in Israel that is affecting the whole way that the government is treating these very important allies of Israel in the United States. Do you see this alliance in danger?
Well, the alliance was never 100% of US Jewry being supportive of Israel. So let's just clarify that point to start with. Every step that is taken that is inconsistent with the majority of American Jewry, which is a reform community, every step that's taken against that fact of the reform Jewry is unhelpful. There's no question about that. And it distances an important part of the Jewish community from Israel. And when it causes that effect, what you have is you have voters that would originally vote based on their belief in Israel's and US relationship, distance themselves from this and look at other aspects of who they're voting for and ignore completely the issue of the US-Israel alliance. So the majority of US Jewry, as I said, is reform. And if the slogan is they're not Jews, well, if you think I'm not a Jew, I'm more Jewish than many of the guys that walk around with a kippah and pale, so well, that's how I feel. I feel I'm more Jewish. So,
I think you're
somebody
right.
asked Shimon Peres one day at a dinner. He was visiting in LA, and I had a few friends at the house, and Shimon, may he rest in peace, was asked, who is a Jew? And the guy who asked was Steve Tisch, who has a school in his name at the University of Tel Aviv. Anyway, he asked because he was married to a non-Jewish person. And Shimon gave, as he always had the talent to do, he said, tell me how you bring up your children, and I will tell you if you are Jewish or not.
This is actually what the Orthodox are saying, and I have a daily fight with a colleague in the radio that asks me, tell me, in what ways are you Jewish? And what the Orthodox are saying, that the chances of a Reformed Jew in the United States that his children and grandchildren will be also Jewish are slim. This is their case. And I don't know what to answer them, because when you're in Israel, there are not a lot of chances for you to marry a non-Jew, but when you live in the United States, it can happen, and it happens. But it doesn't. Why let go all these brothers and sisters, not let them be with us inside this family of Jews? This is the question.
Lack of tolerance, lack of acceptance of the other. They don't only reject the extreme right and the extreme religious, the Orthodox. They don't only reject, they reject so many parts of society. There is no tolerance as part of their DNA. There is my way or the highway. Zero tolerance at any level. It's not a way to conduct yourself if you're a leader in a country, to have zero tolerance towards, whole swaths of the population.
Yes, I agree with you totally. And I remind again, we have still a few minutes to go. Our viewers, anyone that want to ask a question can submit it through the Q&A function in the Zoom screen. I want to ask you about the future visit to the White House. We don't have a date yet for this visit that has to happen every time a prime minister in Israel is coming into office. He's flying to Washington. It took President Biden many days to call and bless Netanyahu after his victory. And right now, we don't see the date yet. Do you think something not so good is happening on this track between the White House and the Prime Minister chamber? So we will see a visit soon. And if so, what's the chances of it to be successful?
Listen, as I told you, when I lived in Israel, we were totally convinced that Israel is the center of the world, and that the United States sits around thinking, what can I do for Israel? I should do something for Israel. Let me see if I can put another law through or another regulation or find another $100 million that I can give them for some. It isn't like that. I mean, the president of the United States, as I mentioned before, has a long list of issues that he needs to address. And let's not forget, he is the American president. He's not the Israeli president. He's the American president. Congress is an American Congress. And both houses of Congress and the administration have to look at what's in America's interest, first and foremost. First and foremost. So it's above my pay grade to tell you the reason why there hasn't been, an immediate invitation. I have no idea why not. Will it come? I am totally convinced it will. So it takes a little longer, whether it's because of priorities or because the administration is looking to send a message to the Israeli government, as we say in Arabic, Dir balak, be careful. We're not that happy with what's going on. I'm not inviting you, and I'm sending Blinken to tell you why I'm not inviting you. Whether it's that or really a priority or combination of both, the latter is probably, the combination of both, I would guess, but I'm really guessing. I don't know that for a fact.
I like the Dir Balak. Nothing is obvious. And I want to ask you finally, Haim Saban, do you agree to the assessment that President Joe Biden is the last American Democrat president, that his authentic love to Israel really comes from the heart and from the soul? He spoke about it many times, because the next generation is totally different.
I completely disagree with that. To paint all of the Democrats with the same brush is simply, twisting reality. I'll give you one example, and it should speak louder than any words that I could say. So the leader of the Democratic Party in Congress is Hakeem Jeffries. When Hakeem Jeffries gave a speech at AIPAC, he got 6 standing ovations. Hakeem is a friend, and we talk quite a bit. I have been a big supporter of his before he became leader of the Democratic Party. His commitment to the U.S.-Israel alliance is from the heart. And understanding the common interest. So to say that, we don't know who, as long as Biden runs again, and if he wins, he wins. And if he loses and we get Trump, maybe he will give Israel back Tel Aviv. He gave Israel the Golan, and we knew, everybody knew that Israel is about to come down from the Golan and giving back to Syria. Ototo, Israel is giving back the Golan. And then the Messiah has arrived and gave Israel the Golan. After, and I quote him, he said to his people, give me a quickie about this Golan thing. Give me a quickie. They gave him a quickie. He said, yeah, you can have the Golan. Of course, the whole world has followed Trump on the Golan. The whole world. There's not one country, not one, that has followed. It's just, baloney. Don't worry about it. There are plenty of members of the Democratic Party that are supporters of Israel, and there are quite a few members that are not. That's the reality of life.
And it's a very good way to finish our very interesting conversation in some optimistic way. I want to thank you, Haim Saban, very much for joining us here in Al Monitor Pro. Thank the viewers. I want to remind everyone to check out Al Monitor Pro for in-depth analysis and future events like this one, and to stay connected to almonitor.com for coverage of all of the news and trends in the region. Haim, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.